My name's Keno, and as he said, I've been with the House to House School of Evangelism. I started part-time in 2023, October of 2023, and we did about 8 or 10 seminars last year, and then this year I accepted a full-time position with them, and we've done, I think this is our 16th or 17th this year, so we get a lot of time on the road, but we get to meet a lot of great brothers and sisters. Very, very rarely do we get to be in Oklahoma, so it's nice to drive 3 hours instead of 15 or 18 hours to get somewhere. But we're excited to be here with you this evening. How many of you were here when Rob came the first time for the seminar? Pretty much everybody? Okay, so what I want to do with this, tomorrow we're gonna do what we call a refresh. And we've been doing those for about, like I said, about a year and a half that we've been doing the refreshes. They typically are on a Sunday. It's 3 presentations or 2 presentations, depending on the schedule. And then we have a private leadership session. This is brand new, what we're going to do tonight. We just started this. It's a continued education. If you're a doctor or a lawyer or any kind of professional, you've got to go to continued education. You've got to keep up on what the new stuff is, what's coming out, what's working, what's not working. And so I want to do that here tonight with you guys, that we could dive a little bit deeper into some of the different facets of evangelism and help you to have a better understanding of some of that. Now, if you go on and look up the House to House School of Evangelism on YouTube, there's about 170 videos on there, all kinds of training for everything you can think of. I'm just going to hit on a few spots, but I want this to be very informal. So if you have questions, stop me, ask questions. I want when I leave here for you to be very comfortable evangelizing in any situation. Not everybody's going to be a teacher, but everybody can teach. And that's what's so important about this evangelism model. It's a model, it's not Rob's model, it's not my model, it's a model that's in the New Testament. And so it's available. If we go do what they did, then we could be who they were. We see in the first century church, they were adding daily to the church. They were constantly growing, constantly adding people to the church. Why? What were they doing different then than what we're doing now? That's what we've been trying to correct, and it's congregational evangelism, like Rob trained you on. He probably shared some numbers with you. I don't know if you'll recall or not, but in 1905, 1 out of every 595 citizens of the United States of America was a member of the Church of Christ. 1 out of every 595. In the next 40 years, that cut down to 1 out of every 205 were a member of the Church of Christ. So you go out, you go out through Lawton and you go to the store and you pass 205 people, and one of them is going to be a member of the Church of Christ. And then that dwindled on down until we got to 1967, 1 out of every 85 citizens of the United States of America was a member of the Church of Christ. And that was that way for the next 5 years. Can you imagine you go out here and just drive down the street and every 85 people, no wonder God was blessing America. This was the fastest growing religious body in the country. We were evangelizing, we were drawing people in, we were teaching, we were growing, and it worked so good that we quit doing it. And we haven't done it since the 70s. I mean, it's been we've just been a constant trend downward, and now as of 2021, 1 out of every 295 citizens of the United States is a Christian today. It went from 85 to 295. The numbers will come out this year, and I fear they're going to be much worse than that. So we've got to do something different. You went through the basic seminar. That is a lot of information to take in 2 or 3 days. There was 2 things that we were really struggling on, really 3. One was how to produce contacts. We had that initial pool of contacts when we started that you write down on your bookmark, and everybody comes up with some names. But you have to understand, you've got to continually keep those contacts coming in to be able to keep evangelizing. And so Rob came and he was helping us with that. Another area we were struggling on was visitors. Let me ask you this, just anybody can pipe up, just curious. Out of every, say, 10 visitors that come in here, how many are baptized, would you say? Probably none or one maybe, here or there. That's the way most congregations are. I want to train you tonight how you can get 80 to 85% of your visitors that come through the door into a Bible study. There's things that well, I'm going to tell you a little bit later about my mom. My mom does not know how to handle visitors when they come in the door. So we had to train her how. We had to train. She'll pin somebody down at the front door for like 30 minutes, and they hear everything that's happened since 1951, And that's what we tend to do. We want to be super friendly, and we want to be, we want to approach them, and we want to talk to them, and we want to just overwhelm them. And sometimes it's too overwhelming. So I'm going to teach you a way that you can get almost every visitor that comes in the door into a Bible study. Another thing that I want to talk to you tonight about is door knocking. Friday, October the 6th of 2023, the night before Rob was supposed to come here, we were going to have the National Door Knocking Day the next day. And so I told Rob, I said, Rob, you don't have to be in Lawton until that evening, and that's a short drive. Why don't you stay and help us knock doors? He said, I will. I said, but you're going to have to teach us how, because it's never worked for us before. He said, I'll teach you how. He did. We had 2 baptisms off that first door knocking when he was there. So door knocking is something that works, but you have to know what to say. You have to know how to go about it. So let's move into this. I want to show you something. You remember this model? You've seen it before. Like I said, every business has one of these. It's a pipeline or a flow chart or whatever you want to call it, but it's a way to get from point A to point Z effectively and efficiently. Y'all have a Chick-fil-A in this town? If you go to Chick-fil-A in this town, it's the same as if you go to Chick-fil-A in Tulsa. It's the same as if you go to Chick-fil-A in Nashville. It don't matter where it's at, it's all the same because they follow the exact same model to get from the beginning to the end. It's very efficient. Works very well for them. They do it all over the country, and it works everywhere that they do that at. This is the same thing, except for this model came straight out of the New Testament. This model is what the early day Christians were doing. If you want to grow and add to the church daily like the early day Christians were doing, then this is what we have to do. In fact, whenever Rob put this into this visual form, he had it up at Polishing the Pulpit in Sevierville, and Dan Winkler walked by. I think it was Dan walked by, and he said, that's what we were doing in the 60s and 70s. Well, yeah, and we were growing in the 60s and 70s. But what's happened is we've gotten away from personal evangelism. And it's something that it's changed the culture of the church, and if we don't turn that around, then the church, the projections by the Pew Research is that by 2050, there will be less than 250,000 Christians in the United States. Now, I'm using the term Christians. I'm talking Christians. I'm not talking people that identify as a Christian. Less than 250,000. Right now, there's just over 1 million. Just a few years ago, there was 1.3 million. So we're on this decline, and we've got to turn it around. Now, the way they come up with those numbers are they take the different variables and they plug them into a formula, and they can make these predictions if we're predictable people. And we've been very predictable people for a long time. So if we keep doing what we're doing now, we're going to be in trouble. We send so much money overseas evangelizing, and I'm fine with that. I don't have any problem with sending money to India or Tanzania or Sri Lanka or Haiti or anywhere else. I don't have a problem with that. But if we don't start doing something right here, we're going to be calling them, asking them to send missionaries over here because they're growing and we're not. So we've got to turn something around. We've got to make some changes. So this is the model. I just want to run through it real quick, little refresh with you. You have contacts. That's Walmart calls them customers. If they don't have them, they're out of business. American Airlines calls them passengers. Without them, they're out of business. We have to have contacts to grow. We can't grow if we don't have somebody to teach. In fact, I would say that this is the most important step on that entire model. More important than Bible studies, more important than baptisms. Because if you don't have contacts, who are you going to study with and who are you going to baptize? So this is where almost everybody can fit in to the evangelism model. Turn your Bibles over to Matthew chapter 28 real quick. Matthew chapter 28, verses 18 through 20. We're going to look at this quite a bit over the next today and tomorrow, but let's just get right to it. Matthew chapter 28, verses 18 through 20. Said Jesus answered and said to him, he said, all power or all authority, your translation may say, is given to me in where? In heaven and in earth. Let me ask you something. If God has all authority, or if Christ has all authority, how much authority does he not have? That don't make sense. If he's got all authority, he's got all authority, right? If you got all authority, then that means you have all authority. So then when he commands us in the very next verse to teach, does he have the authority to command that to us? Sure he does. He says, go ye therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I've commanded you. Rob probably shared with you when he was here. One of the reasons most people don't want to do a Bible study is because they're scared someone's going to ask them a question they're not going to know the answer to. And hey, I was that way for a long time, when I was younger and even up through my 20s and 30s, and I was scared, someone's going to ask me about the rapture. I know we don't believe in it, but I don't have any idea why or what it is. That's what most members of the church will tell you. Or somebody's going to ask me about tongue speaking. I know it's in there, and I know, but I can't answer that question. Or boy, if they ask me about 666 or the mark of the beast, what am I going to say? And so we don't want to evangelize. We don't want to teach because we're scared of them asking questions. You remember what the number one, the first principle of evangelism, do you remember what it was? Defer, don't debate. Does that sound familiar? You don't have to answer a single question they ask you when you're in a Bible study. So don't be scared to do a Bible study. Don't be scared if they're going to ask you something you don't know, because you don't have to answer them. Why? Because Jesus didn't answer them. And Rob talked to you about that whenever he was here before, so I'm not going to go far into that, but you can look throughout the New Testament, throughout Jesus' ministry. He's asked 183 questions. How many did he answer? Anybody remember? 3. That's right. He answered 3 out of 183 questions. On the flip side of that, he asked 338 questions. So he didn't answer people's questions, and you don't need to answer people's questions. Well, why would I say that? Because they're not ready for the answers. They're not ready. I was in a Bible study with a young couple 4 years ago, Marissa and Cardell. We were in a Bible study, and Jamie was my silent partner, and we were having Bible study. He had died. And now he's like 30, 31 years old. He had a heart attack and died, like laying in the bed beside her. She hears him make a noise, and he's out. She started doing CPR on him while she's calling 911. The ambulance gets there. They come in with a defibrillator, and they shocked him once, nothing. Shocked him again, nothing. Shocked him again, nothing. Later they told her 3 times is what they usually will shock somebody. For some reason, they did it 4, and they got him back. They put him in the ambulance. We're taking him to the hospital. He died 2 more times on the way to the hospital. They had to shock him back again. It was a life-changing event, right? So all of a sudden, they were ready for a Bible study. So they came over, and we had dinner, and we sat down and had a Bible study, and they started asking these questions. But I wasn't trained on this. This was before we had Back to the Bible, but I'd never been through the training on the School of Evangelism. I never heard defer, don't debate. And so they start talking about it. His dead grandmother coming and seeing him, ghosts, this, that. They had all kinds of stuff. And I'm trying to answer these questions, and being the typical preacher, I want to make sure everybody knows what I know. And so I'm trying to, preachers are bad about that, aren't we? We want to answer people's questions. That's what we feel like we have to do. But people aren't ready for that at that point. So I let them take me down all these rabbit trails. But the problem is, every time you go down a rabbit trail, you're not going to the cross. If the cross is over here and you're on tongue speaking over here, or you're on the Holy Spirit over here, or if you're out there on 666, you're not taking them to the cross. We've got to stay very focused on the cross. So I ended up, we spent about 3 hours on a 1-hour Bible study. And at the end of that, they never came back. It was done. They never came back for lesson 2. We lost it because I didn't know what I was doing. Went through the School of Evangelism. I learned how to evangelize properly. I learned the right techniques and the right principles. This past January, 4 years after the original study, about 4 years and a month, Marissa sends me a text, and she says, "Hey, Keno, you remember that study we did? Can we go through that again?" You better believe we can, but this time I was ready. This time they had their 14-year-old son with them. So we met, and we ate, and we went into lesson 1, and we started studying. And right off the bat, she started on the mark of the beast. Just right off the bat. I've been studying Revelation. I don't know why everybody wants to start with Revelation. I think it's at the end of the Bible for a reason. That's not where we start at. But everybody wants to go to Revelation. They're all on YouTube, and they got all these wild ideas. You know what I said to her? I said, "That's a really interesting subject. Write that down in the back of your book, and when we get done with this study, we'll come back and answer. But let's build the foundation first." She was fine with it. We went through lesson 1, no problems. We went through lesson 2, no problems. We got ready for lesson 3. Before we even started, she said, "Keno, I know we need to be baptized." And I was thinking, "Oh, this is going to be easy." She said, "But Pastor Dan at Destiny Church," which is the big mega church they go to, "Pastor Dan, we want him to baptize us when the time's right." Again, I didn't let her take me down that trail. I just said, "You know what? I bet he would love to do that. That's wonderful." We went into the Bible study. About 45 minutes later, baptized her husband, and her son, because they recognized the urgency of it. They recognized what baptism was. See, that Back to the Bible is a very structured study. It's teaching the name of Jesus, it's teaching the kingdom, and it's teaching baptism. That's exactly what Philip taught in Acts chapter 8. If you go to verse 12 of Acts chapter 8, that's exactly the 3 points that if you have a study and it's not hitting those 3 points, it's not a Bible study. Let's do what the inspired evangelist did. Let's don't do what we want to do because we know that worked for them. So we have contacts, then we have prospects. You can have all these contacts, but is there any farmers down here? Or is the ground too rocky? There's a farmer. What happens if you go take if you took and just broadcast seed through a 500-acre field and didn't do anything to the soil? Would anything grow? Nah, it's not going to grow. You got to till the soil. You probably got to is there a lot of rocks down in this area or no? No, you don't have to deal with that? Yeah, so you got to prep the soil. You got to till it. You got to prepare it. You got to, you got to make it ready. If you're a gardener, you're out there with a rototiller and you're pulling out weeds and you're getting that soil ready so that when you plant the seed, it'll take, right? You want to get the best results. So you got to prepare the soil first. That's what prospecting is. It's tilling the soil of the heart. It's preparing people to hear the word. I don't know if you know this or not. Almost everybody, not everybody, but almost everybody at some point in their life is willing to hear the gospel. But for most people, it's not today. Most people are not ready today. That's why we look for life-changing events. When someone has lost a loved one, or they've lost their job, or they've, maybe they've moved, or just something in their life, a new baby, some kind of life-changing event, that's when most people are willing to hear the gospel. And most of our baptisms come and studies come from people that have gone through something recently. And so we have that opportunity to sit down and be able to study with them then. So what we're doing when we're prospecting, we're tilling their hearts, we're softening their hearts, we're showing them compassion, we're letting them know that when they're ready, that we're here to help them with that. I don't know, maybe I could probably count on one hand how many Bible studies I've ever asked somebody for. When you till their heart, when you till the soil of their heart through compassion and love, they'll ask you for the Bible study. They may not verbalize it, but their word, their actions, the way that their mannerisms, it's time. And sometimes that can take a very long time to happen, or sometimes that can happen very quick. We were in Sevierville last year at Polished in the Pulpit, and Mark Garner, a good friend of ours that preaches up in northern Tennessee, he and Jamie and I went out to dinner one night, and we're sitting there eating at a Chinese restaurant, and we got up. Mark goes by, Jamie goes by, I'm walking by, and this woman reaches out and grabs my arm, kind of pulls me back over. And I said, "Oh, hey, ma'am, can I help you with anything?" She said, "Can I ask you a question?" And I said, "Sure." She said, "Are you a Methodist preacher?" I said, "No, I'm not, but I am a minister of the Church of Christ." And she said, "Well, I want to ask you a question." She said, "Would you pray for us?" I said, "I'd be glad to pray for you." I said, you want to share with me what's going on? And she did. She shared the circumstances with me. And so we had a prayer. I asked her name and her husband's name. We got done visiting for a few minutes. And I said, "Can I get your phone number? I'd like to stay in touch with you." She said, "Sure." And so she gave me her phone number. And so we left, went to Walmart. About 45 minutes later, I sent her a text. And I said, "Carolyn, I really appreciate you sharing that with me." I said, "This is on Saturday night." I said, "I'm going to be in town till Wednesday morning. I'm going home. But Tuesday night, I don't have anything going on. Would you like to meet my wife and I for dinner? We'd love to buy your dinner." And she said they'd love to. So Tuesday night, we met them at Chick-fil-A, and we invited a member from the Sevierville Church of Christ to come. We needed somebody to make that contact because we were leaving the next morning. We sat down there, and for like an hour, this woman talked of all the tragedy in her life. And I finally said, "Carolyn, I don't know how somebody can go through what you've gone through and still be keeping it together." I said, "That's very difficult for a person to deal with, and without God in your life, it's almost impossible." And she commented back and forth a few times, and just immediately we knew the time was right. So I said, "Carolyn, we've got a wonderful Bible study." I said, "It's 3 little booklets. It would really help you in the things you're dealing with and give you a better understanding of why things are going the way they are." I said, "Would you be interested in doing that?" And she said, "I'd love to." I said, "What's your day off? When are you available?" She said, "I'm available Friday." I said, "Robert, are you available Friday?" He said, "Keno, I'm retired. I'm available every day." And Friday they started doing the study. It was just over a course of maybe 2.5 to 3 hours of conversation. It went from brand new meeting somebody that I've never seen in my life to Robert was in a Bible study with him. On the other hand, I've had people that I've known for years, and I've tried for years to get a Bible study, and it still hasn't happened. But they're on my target list, and I'm going to keep them on my target list until I get them in a Bible study. One of the hardest ones to evangelize to is family. And I'm going to hit on that a little bit tomorrow when there's more people here. I would say probably everybody in here, right, has a family member that's not saved. Am I right? Everybody does. Everybody does. They're the hardest to reach out to, maybe because we feel like it's awkward or, we don't make it weird or something, at the Thanksgiving table. But I'm going to show you a way tomorrow that you'll be able to get, if they like you. I mean, maybe if they don't like you, you wouldn't. But if you have a family member that likes you and that cares about you, I'm going to show you a way that you'll be able to get them into a Bible study. That 90% of the time will result in a conversion. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. So then you have the Bible studies. Anybody here, was anybody here brought to Christ by the Jewel Miller film strips? Several people. Okay, yeah, several people. People were traveling around with that Jewel Miller, and they evangelized. They brought person after person after person to Christ. That's a wonderful Bible study. Ivan Stewart's Open Book, a wonderful Bible study. David Sproul, I can't think of the name of it. He's got one down there in Florida, a wonderful Bible study. If you have a Bible study that you're using and it's working, you're baptizing 4, 5, 6 people a year, keep using it. But if you don't, you guys have Back to the Bible here, and that's the one I use. And you've got plenty of them back there in the storeroom. You've got some out here on evangelism table. Very effective, very easy to go through. All it is literally reading a verse and filling in the blank. John 8:32, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. The question, what did Jesus say will make you free? The truth. It's just that easy. It's just literally just reading it and filling in the blank. But it builds a foundation. See, what we've been doing for a long time, and I used to be bad at, I call it front porch evangelism, where you just sit down and you go right to Acts chapter 2, and then you hit Acts chapter 8, and then you hit Acts chapter 22, and Romans chapter 6, and Colossians chapter 2 and 3, and then you hit in 1 Peter chapter 3, can't leave that one out, and you hit all these scriptures on baptism, and what you're doing is putting a roof on a building that you've never even poured a foundation for. You got to have the foundation first, and then you got to build the walls, and then you build the roof. And that's what that Back to the Bible study does. If you use it, it's very easy to use. You don't have to answer anybody's questions. You can defer, don't debate. You're doing them a disservice if you do answer their questions because they're not ready. They can't comprehend it yet. They're not prepared. Somebody that doesn't even know about salvation does not have any clue or inkling how to figure out anything about tongue speaking or revelation or any of that stuff. They need to know the basics first. That's the reason Matthew chapter 28 verse 19 says, "Go ye therefore and make disciples." Well, how do you make disciples? You have to teach them, right? That's what you're doing. You're teaching. Then you baptize, and then what do? You continue to teach. Teach, baptize, teach. Does somebody have to know about tongue speaking to be baptized? No, they don't have to know about it. Does somebody have to know about any of these things that we get so far off on before they're baptized? No. You're not taking a newborn baby out of the maternity ward and bringing them home and putting a T-bone steak in their mouth. They need milk first. They need to grow first. We don't need to get into stuff that they can't comprehend before they've ever even been taught the basics. Teach, baptize, teach. We don't have to cram the whole Bible in before they can get in the water. We just need to teach them about salvation. We need to teach them the gospel message. You know what the gospel message is? Look at Romans chapter 6, verses 3 through 5. Romans chapter 6, verses 3 through 5. Whole gospel message written out in just a couple of verses. In fact, a lot of people have gotten in the water over the years that I don't even know if they even understood the gospel message. But they need to. It's important, and this is part of retention. I want to share this with you. 80% of all new converts drop out in the first 3 years. Did you know that? You probably did. I mean, you've probably seen people that come and they go, and it's hard to retain them. We've had a very difficult time retaining people in the church, and I think, this is Keno's personal opinion, and I'm guilty of it, I think it's because we baptize people that come down on an emotion. Grandma's over there elbowing them in the ribs, or 3 of their friends got baptized. I don't think they have a good understanding when we're baptizing them. We get excited because somebody wants to be baptized, so we baptize them. And what I've started doing at Coweta, at least until I stepped back out of the pulpit over the last year, what I was doing at Coweta is, I don't even offer an invitation to baptize somebody at the end of the service. I'd offer an invitation to have a study with them. If you're not a child of God and you want to have that relationship, that scriptural relationship with Christ, and you want to know that when you leave this life that where you'll spend eternity, then I want to have a Bible study with you. And we've done some on Sunday afternoons and baptized them within a few hours of when they came forward. But they need to know why they're being baptized. Look at Romans chapter 6, verses 3 through 5. Or do you not know that as many of us as were baptized into Christ were baptized into his death? Now listen to this. I used to be a police officer. I don't know if you know this or not. I was a cop for a lot of years in Oklahoma. It is 100% legal in the state of Oklahoma to write in your Bibles. So I would suggest you get a pen or a pencil and circle this word. Look at verse 4. Therefore we were buried with him in baptism. Circle that word buried. Through baptism into death. Circle that word death. That just as Christ was raised from the dead. Circle that word raised. That is the gospel message. The death, the burial, and the resurrection. People need to know whenever they are ready to submit to Christ, they need to know that their old self is dying, as Paul addresses in Romans 12, 1 and 2, Ephesians 4, 22 through 24. Their old self is dying. They're being buried in the waters of baptism, and they're being resurrected to a new man, right? Things are changing in their life. There's a step that we forget a lot of times. I want you to see right there in verse 5. For if we have been united together in the likeness of his death, certainly we shall be in the likeness of his resurrection. Back up to verse 4. Therefore we are buried with him through baptism into death, that just as Christ was raised from the dead by the glory of the Father, even so we should walk in what? A newness of life. Look at Ephesians chapter 22 through 24. He talks about the same thing, a renewal. Look at Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. He talks about renewal, not to be conformed, but be transformed. A lot of times I think we get this mindset of we put the old self off and we put the new self on. But it's like, if you come in and you're filthy dirty, you've been outside working or whatever, and you're dirty and you're hot and you're sweaty, are you going to come in and take your dirty clothes off and immediately put your clean clothes on? No, you're going to take a shower first, right? We miss that part so often. We miss that renewal process. And that's why we're losing new converts. Because they're going from this to this, but they don't even understand what happened in the in-between. There wasn't that transformation or that renewal of their mind, and so they go back to what was comfortable for them. There's a trainer, a physical fitness trainer I was watching one time. Not that I'm into physical fitness, but I just watched the video. But anyway, there's this trainer, and he said, don't go on a diet, because he said if you go on a diet, you're going to come off a diet. If you want to lose weight and get in shape, he said you have to make a lifestyle change. I was not committed to making a lifestyle change, so I turned it off. But he said you have to make a lifestyle change. Well, it's the same thing with evangelism. Or not evangelism, same thing with becoming a Christian. If you're going to go from the old you to the new you got to make a lifestyle change, because if you don't, you're going to go right back to the way you used to be before. So we've got to do a better job at teaching on our Bible studies. Once they hit the waters of baptism, we've got to do a better job working with the new converts. Those new converts have got to have training. Teach, baptize, teach. We've been real bad in the church. We'll baptize somebody on Sunday, and on Wednesday they're sitting in a class on Ezekiel or something in an adult. They're so lost they have no idea what's even going on. So we've got to go back and we've got to train them and make sure they have the milk before they get the meat. We had a lady that we studied with, Leela, baptized her 2 years ago. Just a few weeks ago was a 2-year anniversary when she was baptized. Her dad was, she was in her 60s. Her dad was her whole life a Church of God, a prophecy, Pentecostal type preacher. She told me, she said, Keno, when we first started the study, she goes, do you know my dad he was able to heal people and speak in tongues, and she's telling me all this stuff. I didn't get into it. I was going to argue with her, defer, don't debate, right? She's not ready for that conversation. I said, that's interesting. We went ahead and went through our study. She ended up being baptized. We got into some new convert training, and that subject came up. So I took her to 1 Corinthians chapter 13, and we looked about, the limited powers and miracles and stuff that took place during the first century until the completion of the Word. She told me when she's done, now this is right after she's baptized, so she's still immature in the faith. She said, Keno, I know what that says, but I'm telling you, I have seen my dad heal people, and I've heard my dad speak in tongues. I said, okay, and we just went on, and I didn't say anything else about it. About 6 months later, we revisited the subject. We went back This time we studied chapter 12, chapter 13, and chapter 14 of 1 Corinthians. We got done, she said, I know what I thought I saw, but she said, there's no way he could have, because it would be contrary to what that says right there. What happened during that 6 months? She matured, didn't she? She grew. Now she was ready for that stuff. She wasn't ready for it before, but now she was ready for it. So it's so important that we work with the new converts and that we mentor them and we spend time with them, that we have them in a class. Do you guys have a new convert class? So, keep them in that new convert class. Keep them growing, until they're ready to come out. Mentor them. Have, 1 or 2 people in the congregation that stays in touch with them weekly. If they miss a Sunday or Wednesday, call them, because it becomes a habit very, very fast. If they miss 1 or 2 services, they're gone. So call them, check on them, invite them over to your house once a month to have dinner and a Bible study. Just staying up with them. We use that study. Beginning of Our Confidence. It's a great one by David Farr. It's a great new convert study that we use. You can go on the Gospel Broadcasting Network. There is a plethora of free Bible studies on there for new converts. In fact, Don Blackwell and Glenn Colley are working on a 13-lesson series that's going to be for new converts. So they're out there. Find a good, sound study and stay with those new converts. When you get that, then you get a growing church. Let me ask you this. What do you get if you get a growing church? You get more contacts. And it starts right back over again. So now you have access to all of their network. One of you brothers, how many? What's the average attendance? Oh, right here in front of me, 54, 79, right? Is that about right? 79, 80. So you need about 800 contacts a year, basically. 700 to 800 contacts a year is what you need to have. When you get new converts, if you baptize, say 8 people a year, well now you've got 10, 12, 15 contacts from them. So that replenishes your contact pool. And we're going to talk tomorrow a lot about how to get contacts. So these are some of the ways that we talked about, when Rob was here, and we'll go into this more tomorrow, but there's literally dozens and dozens and dozens of ways to fulfill each one of these things. Here's the point that I want to make to you. If you're not involved in evangelism, get involved. Because it's not something that we have an option. We can't say, and this is very disturbing. I had an elder tell me this in Texas just a few weeks ago. He said, Keno, I don't have time for evangelism. I've got a million things going on. And he said, I don't have time for evangelism. And I thought, what in the world? I can't imagine that from anybody, but from an elder, you don't have time to save souls? And then I get back in the eastern part of the country here a few weeks ago, and I met a person that was visiting. They weren't a member of that congregation, but they were visiting from another congregation. And she said, my husband's a preacher in an area town. I said, oh, that's wonderful. I said, is he going to make it tonight? She goes, oh, no, he hates evangelism. And I thought, what in the world? That's like saying, well, I hate taking communion, so I'm going to be a Christian, but I'm not going to take communion because I don't like it. Or I'm going to be a Christian, but I don't want to attend a service because I don't like it. I got other things. You can't say, we don't get to opt out of saving souls. That's a command from our Savior. And we're going to stand before Him and be held accountable. So you have got to be involved in evangelism. That's not something you get to opt out of. But you don't have to be the teacher. A lot of people, they're not comfortable with that, and that's fine. If you can plug anywhere in there, if you can make a target list and just write down some names of people that you know that if they died today, they wouldn't go to heaven, you've helped evangelize. You've fulfilled a great commission. If you can fill out a compassion card, if you can invite somebody to a meal, if you can launder the baptismal garments, anything that you can do in that process that helps lead souls. Let me ask you this, and don't answer out loud, but I'm just asking you to think about this. 5 years, in the last 1,800 days, how many people have you had a hand in leading to Christ? If you go over the course of 5 years and that number is like very low, like 0, 1, 2, we got to step our game up, folks. That's the reason the church is dying. And it was the same way for me. I wanted to evangelize, but I didn't know how to evangelize. And you don't know what you don't know. But we want to address that this weekend so that you do know, so that you don't have any reason not to evangelize. Because this church, I don't know how many what is this hold in here? Maybe 150? Probably, looks like. I mean, you could fill this up in a few years. Do you know that if you baptize 10% of your congregation, which is very doable, 10%, so if you got 80 people, if you baptize 8 people a year, every 7 years you'll double in size. And if you have a new converts class and you're doing a good job mentoring, you'll retain 75 to 85% of those, you could literally fill this building up in a matter of 5, 6, 7 years. At Coweta, we were a tiny congregation. When Rob came there, I think we were 21, 22 people. Little bitty. We'd been in the 70s, 15 years before that, but McDonnell Douglas shut down in Tulsa. American Airlines moved a bunch of people off. Everybody chased their jobs and went somewhere else, and we were left with just a few, and it was a very gray-headed congregation. Me and Jamie in our 40s were the youth group pretty much, other than our kids. And so now we're running in the 60s to sometimes around 70. We would have well over 70, but we had 2 families of 4 both moved off. All we did was just took what we're taught in the scriptures and just put it into practice. We didn't have no special pill, no special potion, no magic spell, no nothing. All we did is we got into the scriptures and we just did exactly what the New Testament Christians did. All right, so let's look at this, contacts. And we'll talk about this a little bit more tomorrow, but I want to help you with some of this. So you have 3 different types of contacts. One of them is a cold contact. That's somebody maybe you're at Buffalo Wild Wings and it's somebody sitting at the table beside you. You've never seen them before in your life. You don't know anything about them. You don't know. I mean, you meet them at the line at the Walmart when you're checking out, and you don't know a thing about this person. That's as cold as it gets. Door knocking a lot of times is a cold contact. They're very difficult to convert, but they are convertible. You just have to build a relationship with them. You have to show them that you care. You remember that saying? I know Rob probably said it when he was here. It's been going around for 40 years. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. You have to show them that you have to be compassionate. So we have ways of doing that with the compassion cards, with meals, with all different kinds of ways of doing that. But the cold contacts, they're the most difficult. You'll get them, but they're very hard to get. Then there's the warm ones. The warm ones are somebody that, it's a family member or a friend or a coworker or somebody that you know, but you never really had gospel conversations with them, right? Maybe your neighbor or somebody like that. They're very approachable and they're very convertible, but it's still not the easiest ones. Then you have hot ones, and that's what I want to focus on tonight. Visitors, hot contacts. Brothers and sisters, you ought to have 80 to 85% of your visitors ought to be in a Bible study when they come through the doors. When you have somebody sitting in your pews, it doesn't get any hotter. When they come through that door, they're ready to be baptized. They just don't even know it yet. All you have to do is teach them and show them, but they're ready. So I want to teach you how to do that. What's the number one thing you think that visitors want to do when they come in? Anybody? They want to sit down. Pew polled a bunch of them, about 1,500 of them. And they said the number one thing they want to do is they want to sit down. They don't want to be accosted by Gabby gossip at the door, patting them down, checking the FBI watch list. They don't want all that stuff. They don't want to know everything that's happened in my mom's life from the day she was born until her 73rd birthday. They don't want to know that stuff. They want to come sit down. So we've had to retrain our congregation because our congregation is very friendly. You've been to our congregation. It's a friendly congregation. We've had to retrain the congregation to not mob them at the door and hold them right there, but to let them come in and sit down. Did we let you sit down when you came? Okay, good. We would have held you at the door for 30 minutes. And we're just trying to be nice because we don't get a lot of visitors, Often, sometimes we might go a week or two, not even get a visitor. Sometimes we might get 2 or 3 visitors a week, but we'd be excited and we'd want them to, we'd hope that they'd stay and hope that they would feel comfortable. So we'd hold them up at the door. Don't do that. Let them come sit down. And I'll explain that a little bit more as we go on a little bit further. So there's different kinds of greetings. There's the cold shoulder greeting, that's the members that they see somebody come in and they just completely ignore them. We don't want to do that. I'm not telling you to ignore visitors. There's the casual nod, the person, they'll just look at them and just real briefly say something. And then there's the overboard. We're trying to find a medium ground there. So what we've asked our congregation to do, when somebody comes in visiting, everybody be friendly. Everybody say hi, great to have you, glad to see you. Just don't get them bogged down in a 30-minute interrogation. Let them come in and sit down. That's the greeting that we're looking for. Then we're going to select door greeters and pew greeters. Do y'all have these yet? Door greeters or pew greeters? Or have you? I don't remember if this was part of the training when Rob was here. I don't think it was.
Not officially, but we have people that are always out.
Okay. So here's what I want you to do. And this is very effective if you'll do this. Have a couple of guys, or whoever, just have a couple of people that are door greeters. And that's all they're doing. We use our younger, we have about now, I think we have about 18 or 19 people in their 20 age range, from 20 to 29. And so we'll use them. We have a couple of our young men out there or whatever, and all they're doing is they'll stand out in front of the door and they'll visit, and somebody comes in, they open a door, and they hand them a bulletin, and they point right into, because our building's the same way. You come in, and there's the auditorium right there. And so we say, they'll open the door, and they'll say, hey, glad to have you here this morning. Come on in, sit anywhere you like. There's no assigned seats. Brothers and sisters, if you come in and somebody's sitting in your seat, please do not ask them to move. That happened one time at a congregation that was in Texas. A man came in, just stood there and stared at him until they got up and moved, because that was his seat for 50 years. Tell them there's no assigned seats. Just sit anywhere you want to sit. And that's all the door greeter's going to do. He's just going to give them a bulletin, show them where the seating is, and that's it. And so when they're walking through and they're walking to the auditorium, you guys are passing them in the foyer or right here in this area. And hey, great to have you here. Glad you came to worship with us today. Sit anywhere you like, and just let them sit down. That's all you're going to do. Then you're going to have pew greeters, and that's where the real training comes in. Your pew greeters need to meet and practice this. I mean, we can practice it tonight if you want, I don't care, but your pew greeters need to be trained like Navy SEALs. They have a mission, and that one mission is to get that person's contact information. And I'll show you how to get that contact information 99.9% of the time. In fact, the only time you're not going to get their contact information is if they're wanted by the FBI. They may not give it to you then. But other than that, I guarantee you they're going to give it to you every time you do it. So here's your door greeters. They're welcome them. They direct them into the auditorium there. Now the pew greeters, you need 4 to 6 teams per 100 members. So for a congregation this size, I would say about 4. You need to have about 4 couples, or 4 teams. It doesn't have to be a couple, but it works better if it is. You need to have about 4 couples that they're trained for this. And this is what they do. They know their job in and out, and they're ready when a visitor comes. So what's your name, sir? Yeah. Brent. So Brent's sitting over here. Is that where you usually sit at when you're here? You don't have an assigned seat. Who's got an assigned seat in here? You sitting where you always sit, aren't you? Okay. Huh? Okay. All right. Well, there we go. So if that visitor is sitting over here and you're on the greeter team, now today your assigned seat's right over here. This is what I want you to do. It says sit in front or behind. It really works better if you sit in front of them if it's possible. So the visitor comes in, they sit down. I know her too. She's a good visitor. You're the visitor today, right? So you come. What's your name again?
Fred.
Fred? Is that your real name or it's a stage name? I knew that was a stage name. I could tell by the way he said it. Okay, Fred. So Fred comes in. He sits down right here. And so, they've directed him in. Now I'm going to come in right here and I'm going to say, oh, hey, nice to meet you. What's your name? This guy's got multi-personalities or something. It was Fred 30 seconds ago. Okay, nice to meet you, Tom. I'm Keno. Glad you're here. Are you just passing through or are you new to the area?
We've been here forever.
Okay, that's what you're looking for. Now, if he would say that he's just passing through, no, I'm on my way to Tulsa. Well, we're going to be nice to him, but that's not who we're looking for, right? I can't evangelize somebody that's on their way to California that's coming from Georgia. So if he would tell me, no, I'm from Florida and I'm headed to New Mexico, I would say, well, it's great to have you here. Hope you enjoy the service and we look forward to getting to know you a little better. And that's it. And then I'm going to leave it at that. All right? That's not who I'm looking for. It's not that I'm not happy he's here, but that's not who I'm looking for. So if Tom tells me, he said, no, we've lived here all our life. Well, Tom, it's great to have you. Tell you what, I've got a gift right over here for you, Tom. We've got these bags made up, and I want to give you this gift. Does this got a contact card in there? Yeah, no, it don't. Okay, so you're going to have a contact card in your hand, but you're going to tell them, here we go. Tom, we'd like to give you guys this gift right here. And Tom, we're a card sending congregation. Can I get your name and address so we can send you a card? Sure, he's going to give it to me. He's going to give it to me because I just gave him a gift. He's not going to say no unless the FBI is looking for him. Tom, that's a staged prop. You don't get that one, Tom. Put that back over here. So he's going to give that information. Here's what we've historically done in the church. Hey, Tom, would you fill that out? And when the offering plate comes through, if you'll just throw that in there. And or when a lot of us were kids, we wanted to be the young men that got to come down the center aisle and collect them, pass them into the inside. Remember that? You know what Tom's going to do with that thing? He's going to go like this. Yep, not doing it. He's going to throw it right over there on the seat beside him, and he ain't going to fill it out. And then after the service is over, you're going to walk in and you go, Tom, we don't have your information, Tom. And he's already gone, and you're done with it. He's gone out the door. What I want you to do is say, we're a card-sending congregation, and we'd like to, if I get your name and address, we'd like to mail you a card. He's always going to give it to you because you gave him a gift. So then you're going to take that information, and you're going to put it on a prospect list. I don't know if I got a picture of this on there or not. I'm a little behind on my deal. Well, there it is. We're going to add it to a prospect list. After a while, during the afternoon, between the services, we're going to add that name to this prospect list. Now, here's what, who would make this? Would you be the one to make this list? Have you seen this list? It's on the website. So if you go on the website under prospects, did the ladies do it? Yeah. So you print these out?
We have them.
You have them like in a stack or what? Yeah. Okay, so here's what I want you to do with this. I want you to print one of these every Sunday with the names on it. Like when you have a visitor come in, put their name on there. Now you may have other contacts, other prospects, on there, but when somebody comes in, a visitor, put their name on there Sunday morning, because Sunday afternoon, you need to be writing cards to them. Do y'all you do the compassion cards? Who heads that up?
We haven't done it in a while.
Haven't done it in a while? Okay, so let's do this. You got copies of these, or you can print them off the website. So you're going to take this list. Every Sunday afternoon, you're going to make this list out. Or at the very least, every other Sunday afternoon. You're going to make this list out. This is going to have names of your people, the names you write on your bookmarks. I'll address that tomorrow. But when we're talking about visitors, they always go to the top of the list. Any visitor that comes in here that lives in this area, their name goes on this list. Now, you can edit that where it says prospect list. Take that off. You can edit it in the website. Put compassion list, or neighbor list, or love list, or something. You don't want somebody to come in and see their name on a prospect list. We just put that on there so you know what the list is. So you're going to write their name on there. You're going to write who, what's going on, that they're a visitor or what have you, and you're going to write their address. Over on the side, there's a box that says single and one that says multiple. You're going to check multiple. That night, you got to come together and spend 20 minutes and fill out compassion cards. If you don't have a coordinator over compassion cards or somebody to lay it out and set it up, this weekend, think of somebody, whoever would want to head that up or talk to the men or whatever, but get with my wife and she'll teach you how to do that very effectively and very easily, where it's not a big burden. It doesn't become confusing. It's very structured. The cards are mailed out at a certain rate, so they're getting them over a span of 2 to 3 weeks, a certain number of cards. There's a method to the science there, right? It needs to be done a certain way for it to be effective. So you're going to fill their name out, and everybody's going to write a compassion card for them that night, and they're going to thank them for coming and visiting. They're going to thank, we didn't send you cards, did we? But we sent your niece cards. See, we didn't send her cards, not because we didn't like her being there, but we knew she was already a member of the church. We knew she was from down here. We sent her niece cards, who was there in Coweta. So that's what we're going to do, right? We're going to overwhelm them with compassion. So they're going to get 2 or 3 cards in the mail every single day for the next 2 or 3 weeks. They're going to be getting these cards from thanking them for coming to the Sullivan Village Church. We enjoyed you. So that's that part of it. Now, when the lesson's over with, let me see if I'm back. It's over with, so, okay, he's sitting there. This is this lesson. I'm going to sit right here in front of him for the remainder of that lesson, of that worship service. Doesn't matter if I normally sit over here. Today, I'm going to sit right here in front of him. When it's over with, I'm going to stand up and ask him, what'd you think of the service today, Tom? Did you enjoy it? Preacher pretty good? Mediocre? I bet that ain't what you'd say. But you're going to ask him, you say, what'd you think of the service? Did you enjoy it? And they're going to say, yeah, I enjoyed it. And I'll tell you what, we've got a tradition here. We always take visitors out to lunch. Can we buy your lunch today? 50% of the time they're going to say no. But the other 50% of the time they're going to say yes. And even if they say no, it doesn't matter, because you got their contact information, right? You filled that card out. So you've got their contact. That was the sole purpose of those pew greeters, is to get that contact information. If you can get a meal, that's even better, because people, they open up around food. Always eat. Now, if you remember Rob telling you, always eat when you meet people. People will lower their guard, they'll open up, and you'll build relationships around meals. It's very effective. The weight of a person's heart's through their stomach. It's very effective. So always offer to take them out to eat. What we did at Coweta, we went and opened a separate checking account, an evangelism fund, and we got a debit card, and we just, whoever's the pew greeters for that day, we just nonchalantly slip them that card so they can go buy that person's meal. Or you can go get some gift cards for a restaurant or something. Some members will do it. That's part of their almsgiving, but some of them can't afford to take a family of 4 out. And so the church can help, with evangelism funds to take care of that. What you're doing is you're opening a window for a Bible study. If I would ask him for a Bible study, he's never been in a Church of Christ before. He comes in and I meet him and I ask him for a Bible study. He's going to tell me no, he's not interested. 9 times out of 10. But we start going to meals together and visiting, and later on I invite him into my house and stuff. It's going to start opening that window up to where I can get that Bible study. I'm going to tell you something, folks. Somebody comes to my house and eats our food, they're going to have a Bible study almost every time. And it really happens. And it's not, it's just the way it goes. People love to sit down and eat, and when they eat, they open up, and we almost all, maybe not that night, and maybe not the next time they come, maybe it's the 3rd or 4th time they come, but we're going to end up in a Bible study with them if you'll do that. I'm telling you, folks, you'll be shocked how many of your visitors will end up in a Bible study. So when you go back to that wheel, that model, let me back up here real quick. If you have, let's just round this up to 80. If you have 800 contacts, you know how many prospects you're going to get? About 80. You remember in Matthew chapter 22, verse 14, what did Jesus say? Many are called, but how many are chosen? Few are chosen. So you got to go to the many if you want to get to the few. If you go to the few, guess how many you're going to get? Not hardly any. You're not going to get hardly any if you go to the few. So you got to go to the many. So if you get 800 contacts, you're going to get 80 prospects. Out of 80 prospects, you're going to get about 8 or 9 Bible studies. Now, can you see why we need such a big pool of contacts? To get 8 or 9 Bible studies, you got to have 800 contacts. But if you get that 8 or 9 Bible studies, using this back to the Bible, you know what the conversion rate is? 92%. From all the congregations enrolled in the School of Evangelism that use this study, ours at Coweta is a hair over 90%. But 90 to 92% is the conversion rate. Almost every one of them that you get into that Bible study will end up being baptized. Then you move them into the new converts deal. So this is why it's so important that we focus on these contacts and that we focus on the prospecting and the tilling the soil, because that's our end goal, is to get them into the waters and then to retain them afterward. All right, let's keep moving. We'll wrap this up. We'll take a quick break. What time is it? Oh, right on time. Okay, write this down. If you don't remember, you may have it. Write this down. There's 3 questions. Do you remember the introductory questions? I don't know if Rob talked. A lot of his material is new over the last year. So it's 3 introductory questions. I want you to write these down. These are very important when you meet somebody. Maybe you go to lunch with Tom, or maybe you're just meeting somebody that you met through visiting, or whatever the means might be. Here's the first thing I want you to ask them. I want you to ask them, where are you from? Ask them where they're from. And sometimes you may spend the next 2 hours hearing about Godebo, Oklahoma or somewhere. I don't know where, but they're going to talk to you for what you're doing. You're breaking the ice. Ask them, where are you from? Then ask them, what do you do for a living? And you'll hear for another however long. They're going to tell you all about what they do for a living, how long they've been on the job, the people they've met, the things they've experienced, the things that they've done. They're going to tell you all about it, and they love to talk about their jobs. People love to talk about where they're from, and they love to talk about their jobs. The third question I want you to ask them is, what do you like to do for fun? Learn about their hobbies. And listen to their answers. Be a good listener and listen to their answers. Let them talk. Let them tell you about them. Don't jump in and start telling all your life story. Let them say what they need to say. What you're doing is you're opening up that conversation. You're starting to build that relationship. Those are introductory questions. Then at some point you're going to go to transitional questions. And your transitional questions are going to be this. What do you think about the Sullivan Village Church of Christ? Like maybe after they're visiting, maybe you're going to lunch, you say, Tom, what did you think about the Sullivan Village Church of Christ? Tom just say, man, they got an awesome preacher. It's wonderful. The people are friendly. Everybody's nice. I really enjoyed it. It was a great time. And then my next question I'm going to say to him, I'm going to say, well, Tom, do you know much about the Sullivan Church of Christ, Sullivan Village Church of Christ? Do you know much about them? Tom just say, no, I mean, I've lived around here for 20 years, but I really haven't had a chance to go down there. I haven't ever known anybody there. I don't really know a lot about them. And then my next question is going to be, Tom, would you like to know more about the Sullivan Village Church of Christ? And Tom's going to say what? Yeah. He's going to say, man, they got this guy Fred down there. He's a cool guy. Those are transitional questions. That's taking you from the introduction into the Bible study. Sometimes that'll happen all within an hour or two. And sometimes that'll happen over the course of 2 years. I mean, you don't know, right? Everyone's different. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. But if you'll ask those questions, that's how you transition from that person that you just met into the pew into a Bible study, is by asking those questions. I'm going to share one with you real quick, and then we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back in. There was a man that came, one of our deacons, his father-in-law come down and visit him. He's a retired law enforcement from California. They ask him every time he comes to town if he would come worship with him. He always says no, not interested. In fact, his daughter, when she was 12 years old, wrote in her Bible, in the front of her Bible, that her greatest prayer was that her dad would one day become a Christian. She's in her 30s now, right? And every time she's gotten a new Bible, she writes that down in the front of the Bible. So anyway, he comes this one time, I think it was when Ridge was born, wasn't it? He came down when the baby was born. And so she asked him again, like she always does. For some reason, he came. Now Renee didn't come, but Ken came. And so she stayed at the motel. Mom stayed at the motel. Dad comes to church. He sits and worships. After it was over with, I went up, and I'd met him before, when he'd been in town over at their house. And I said, Ken, it was great to have you here this morning. I said, we got a tradition. We always like to take people out to lunch. Can we buy your lunch today? He said, sure. I said, why don't we go down to Mazzio's Pizza and we'll have lunch? So we went down there and we visited and we talked about, we'd both been in law enforcement, so we talked about that. And we're getting toward the end of our meal, and I said, Ken, I said, do you know much about the Coweta Church of Christ? And he said, well, I mean, Cassidy and Matt go here. They really like it, and they enjoy it. And I said, and I knew he hadn't been there before. And so then I said to him, I said, Ken, would you like to visit a little bit and understand why they believe like they believe, and understand, why they worship here? It'd just take a little bit. I said, I've got a study called Does It Matter? You got some of them back there? It's back to the Bible condensed into one. The reason I use Does It Matter is because this was Sunday and he was leaving Tuesday to go back to California. So I had to act quick. I said, I'd love to sit down with you. Just take about an hour and a half. We go through a study, and you'd see why Cassidy and Matt like it here, and why they've built these relationships. So he goes, I'll do it. He said, I probably should do it. And so I said, well, do you want to call Renee and see if she wants to join us? He goes, oh no, her brother's a Baptist preacher. If she was going to go anywhere, it'd be the Baptist church. I said, that's fine. So we go back and we sit down. We go through Does It Matter? And I just knew he was going to get baptized. And we get right to the end of it. I mean, I'm asking those conversion questions and ready to close the deal, so to speak. And he just said, I'm not ready. I said, well, Ken, you see, though, that you need to do this, right? He said, I see it, Keno. He said, but I'm just going to be honest with you. He said, I'm a retired law enforcement, and I look for evidence. And he said, I can't sit down just on a whim like this. He said, I need some time to process all this. And I said, hey, Ken, I understand that. I don't think God asked us to have a blind faith. And I said, I'll tell you what, take that book with you. And when you get back to California, if you have any questions, you call me. He said, I'll do it. He went home Sunday night, went through it again with his wife, who didn't want to come to it. Monday morning, they called their son-in-law, Matt, and said, meet us at the church building. We're ready to get baptized. Matt baptized his mother and father-in-law. They went back to California. We put them in touch with the congregation in Sonora. They're doing very, very well. I mean, they went from somebody that wanted no part of it to being in the waters, just asking those questions. That's how we transitioned, asking those transition questions we just talked about. All right, let's finish this up real quick. Meal invitation, prospect list, we talked about that. How many visitors do you need to grow? Let me ask you this. How many visitors do you have on average on a Sunday? Do you have them every week, or is it kind of sporadic?
Almost every week.
Do you get a lot of military visitors or people that are on our own? Yeah, okay. So if you have, for every 100 members, ideally you would want 5 to 7 visitors a week to see if you're just getting your growth off visitors, right? Now, you got other ways you're going to get growth too, but we're just talking about just visitors for now. So you've got some training cards in there in the back. I just saw them a while ago. One of them is this contact visitors training card. What we need to do over the next day or two, we need to identify, get with the elders here, but we need to identify who's going to be those door greeters and who's going to be the pew greeters. And it can be people that trade out. The door greeters is the easy part. You're just handing them a bulletin and you're directing them in. But whoever wants to help with the pew greeting, you need to have some training sessions, and everything that we just practiced, practice it on each other. Like go outside, come in, do mock training, and rehearse it over and over and over, maybe an hour a week or 2 hours a week for a couple of weeks till you have it down pat. You got to be a Navy SEAL at that. Your mission is to get that contact information so that you can get them into Bible studies. Taking them out to lunch, knowing what to say, when to say it, how to say it. Practice that. There's training videos on the website.
Okay, so the pew greeter, this is the individual, they're going to sit in it, they're going to have to be out of their comfort zone, sitting in their typical seat, and then they're going to take them out to eat, and then they're going to keep having them over to their house.
They will.
This individual is going to be getting to know they're responsible for basically getting them to the point of Bible study. Then are they the ones Bible study?
Don't have to be. If they want to be, they can be. But you're right. They're going to build the relationship. But say if I'm the pew greeter and I've built that relationship, and maybe I can ask those transitional questions and say, would you like to learn more about the East Sullivan? Yeah, we would love to. Okay, then I'm going to call you and say, hey, can we set up a time that we could all get together and do a Bible study? Or else or if I'm getting that direction, I may even have you and your wife come out to the house and we have a meal with all 6 of us or something where we get to know each other.
Where the disconnect may be is like some people think, okay, well, I'll be willing to go sit down, get their name on a card, but don't ask me to be like having them over to my house all the time.
Yeah, no.
Start like building this relationship with them, but I don't mind getting their name on a contact card. So
you could do that. You could even take them out to lunch, and then you can bring somebody else into that relationship. You bring in one of the elders or bring you in or something like that. We've done that several times. We've had members that will take somebody out to eat, and then they don't push them on me, but they bring me and Jamie to where we can build that relationship with now, and then we take them from there and take them into the Bible study. So the person that, all you're doing is maybe having them over for a few meals at the house. You don't want to invite them to your house the first day. I'm not going to invite Tom to my house the first time meeting because he's going to think I'm a serial killer and he's not going to go. I'm going to take him to a restaurant the first time, but then after the restaurant, then I'm going to say, well, that was a great conversation. Boy, I sure enjoyed getting to know you. Tell you what, I don't know if you guys are free. I'm going to throw some burgers on the grill. Would you like to come out to the house and we could catch up and visit some more? And that's how you build into that relationship. We had one, last year we had a chuck wagon, or year before last we had a chuck wagon we hired. We've got 30 acres of land outside of town, and so we hired a cowboy to come out with his chuck wagon and cook chili and cornbread is in the fall, We told all the members, invite somebody that you know is not saved, and they invited them out there, and it gave us an opportunity to build those relationships. And so there were some people that brought people with them, but then Jamie and I were able to make a connection with them during that time and take them from there and walk them in through the Bible study that resulted in several baptisms from it. So, it doesn't have to be the pew greeter doesn't have to go from point A to point Z. They just got to get them comfortable and get those relationships started building. Does that make sense?
And you don't want that visitor to be like a football thrown around everywhere.
No, I would just invite, maybe just bring in one other person. Whoever I would bring in would be the person that's going to do the Bible study with them. Or, another thing you could do is, say if you're going to do the Bible study, and Jamie and I are the person that met Tom or whatever, then maybe on the Bible study, I'll be your silent partner. I'll bring it together and get it all done. You do the teaching, but I'll sit in there with him because I have a relationship with him and be the silent partner. You always want to have a silent partner when you're studying. Always have a silent partner if possible. And it's bad. Men always have a woman silent partner if you're studying with a woman. Or, if you have, don't ever put yourself in a situation where you're studying with a woman by yourself. Now, if you're studying with a couple, then it could be 2 men, or maybe if it's a woman, we've had our women get together and study with another woman, but or you could have a man and a woman study with a woman, or however, but just be cognizant of the fact you don't ever want, and that's the same way on door knocking, you don't ever want 2 men going to a door. You always want to have a woman with you or a child with you whenever you go to the door, especially if it's a house that has a single woman or something in it. That's Rob's deal there. So anyway, there we go. Let's take about what time is it? About a 5-10 minute break. I ran a little bit long. Stretch your legs, and then we're going to come in and we're going to talk about door knocking, and then we'll wrap up. I'm going to change that PowerPoint real quick. You got the door knocking one on there? Oh, oh, did you work?
Yeah, it's my computer problem. So we're going to switch you up. There's a silver pointer up there.
Silver? Okay.
See that?
Yep.
That's our main pointer.
Okay, that'll work. All right, perfect. And you're still using this? Door knocking, yeah. What Jesus said about door knocking. All right, perfect. Thank you.